Let's face it, choosing Virgin Voyages is not the cheapest way to cruise, which means that there's pressure to get everything right before you head on board to make sure you have the best time possible. Well, we've now sailed with Virgin Voyages dozens of times, and there are a few mistakes that we've made in the past before we headed on board, so I'm putting together 6 insider tips that you need to know before you head on board to make sure that you set sail in the right direction. And what we're going to walk through today hopefully will make the difference between you getting those dining reservations and booking into those all important events and making sure you have everything in your suitcase that you need before you head on board, and even more. If we haven't met before, my name is David from VV Insider, which is a website that's all about Virgin Voyages and nothing else. I help run this website that is full of guides and tools and travel tips that you absolutely need to know before you head on board your Virgin Voyage, including a lowdown of everything you're going to see at all the restaurants, all of the events, and crucially, exactly what your cabin's going to be like before you head on. So whether you're heading on board your very first Virgin Voyage this year, or if you sailed before in the past and simply want to keep on top of all the news, just make sure that you hit subscribe to make sure these videos pop up in your feed every now and then. Well, as promised, today we're going to walk through those expert tips to make sure that you don't make the beginner mistakes that tons of sailors make every single year. Well, there's tons to cover, so let's jump right in at tip number 1. And this is making sure that you complete your check-in as quickly as possible. And when we talk about checking in for your Virgin Voyage, we're not talking about the experience you get at the port. Instead, this is about you making sure you're ready to sail using the Virgin Voyages app. So every sailor must be checked in using the Virgin Voyages app, and there's a certain amount of information that you'll need to put into the app in order to secure your reservation. It's important to know here that this isn't like an airline or a traditional cruise line where you're waiting to get that email to tell you that you're ready to check in. Actually, as soon as you make your reservation and you've made your payment for your deposit, you can actually check in then. And I encourage you to do this really quickly for a few reasons, which I'll get into in just a moment. But the things that you're going to be asked for are things like your passport number or your document reference numbers to make sure that you have the required ID to travel. You'll also be asked for any emergency information, so those contact numbers that the crew will need to use if they need to let somebody on land know what's going on the ship. It's also at this point where you'll register your payment card, and your payment card will be used to take a security deposit before you head on board, and that's to cover any transactions or incidental charges that you might incur when you're at sea. The requirements for checking in may change from time to time, so simply follow the instructions on the app to make sure you're doing it right. But here's why you need to do it as quickly as possible, and why those that have sailed on the brand multiple times always do this as soon as the booking is made. And there's a number of reasons for this. The first reason is making sure you have everything above board before you leave the house. And if you're doing it as soon as possible, you're saving the hassle later on or closer to your travel date to make sure your passport is up to date, you have all the information you need, your payment cards haven't expired. Anything that might lead to an unnecessary headache, get it out the way and do it early. But the biggest reason we recommend you do this is because at the end of the check-in process, that is when you'll pick your port arrival time. And choosing an earlier port arrival time will really set the tone for how your embarkation day is going to go. So this is done on a first come first served basis. So by checking in early, you get a wider variety of time slots to choose from, which means hopefully those earlier check-in slots are available. So you can choose slots from as early as 2:30 in the afternoon, which means that your vacation can get started as quickly as possible. This is important for a few reasons, notably that you'll be able to spend more time on board, but also you'll be able to book in to your event and your restaurant reservations as early as possible. Remember, when you're booking dining before you travel, only a certain number of slots are available to you. Quite a lot of the dining slots will be available on embarkation day, so if you're on the ship early, you'll be able to snag the best reservations possible. It also means those events that are likely to sell out, including things like the grog walk or some of the activities that are popular on social media, for example, do book out very quickly. So if you're on board sooner, you'll have a better chance of snagging those reservations for those popular events. One bonus tip here is that if you've checked in early enough, the Splash of Romance package may still be available for your sailing, so you can add it to your booking if you like. The Splash of Romance package has a number of benefits, and we delve further into this on a couple of our YouTube videos, but also over on our website at vvinsider.com. But notably, you'll get priority boarding, so you'll be boarding the ship just after the rock stars. You also get things like a shake for champagne, as well as treats in the room. It's quite a popular package, and there are a limited number of Splash of Romance packages available for each sailing. So by checking in early, you'll be able to snag your chance of getting that Splash of Romance package for your voyage. Tip number 2 is all about dining and making sure that you have your dining reservations right before you set sail. And when I say getting your dining reservations right, there's a little bit of an art to this. First of all, you'll need to understand when you can actually book your dining, and your dining reservation booking window will depend on the type of ticket that you've purchased. So if you're a rock star or a mega rock star, you'll get 120 days from your sailing to be able to book your dining. If you've chosen the premium voyage fare choice, you'll have 60 days. If you've chosen essential, you'll have 45 days. Or if you've chosen the base fare or the lock-it-in rate, you'll only have 15 days before you're sailing to book your dining. And of course, that generally means if you're booking dining closer to the point where you sail, you'll have fewer options available to you. But it does mean a whole host of other sailors will also be able to book as soon as your dining reservation window opens. So it's really important to know when that window is going to open. Generally, it's around about midnight on Miami time, but we put together some hints and tips in our dining guide over on vvinsider.com, and it's got some tips in there on how to avoid disappointment when it comes to booking dining. One of the biggest tips in there is to make sure you book those harder to get spots first. So this comes down to practicality. The most popular and the smallest restaurants, so this includes Pink Agave and The Wake, are generally the hardest reservations to get. So maybe prioritize them when you're booking your dining. But as most Virgin Voyages seasoned sailors will tell you, do not worry if you can't get your dining reservations. There's always hope. So as I mentioned earlier, as soon as you head on board, you'll be able to go down to where Razzle Dazzle is on deck 5. Of course, ship depending which restaurant you will see there. But if you go down there, there will be a restaurant manager available, and you'll be able to book any remaining dining if you like, or you can have a look on your app as soon as you head on board to see which slots are available. But remember that those traditional sit-down restaurant dining spots are not the only way to have your evening meal on board Virgin Voyages. There are very solid options available in both the galley and the pizza place as well as other snacks and other food items around the ship too. And remember, on most of the ships, there is a dinner cabaret style show available. So if you're on Resilient Lady, you're going to see another Rose. If you're on Valiant Lady, you'll see a ship show. Or if you're on Brilliant Lady, you have Up with a Twist. Some of these do carry a charge, so do check vvinsider.com before you commit to any of these. But you do want to allow some flexibility in your dining to be able to go to these shows, or maybe just have a night off of the traditional formal dining and maybe have a little bit of a casual night. Maybe on Scarlet Night, for example, you might want to do pizza or something like that so that you can have more control over your night. You're not sat with a 2-hour dinner reservation. But if all else fails and you have no reservations and you do fancy a sit-down dinner, head up to the restaurant that you fancy and ask about the walk-in availability. It's more common than you would think, and it does mean that you might be waiting a little while, but often it is a good way to get a reservation if you don't have one yet. Now on to tip number 3, and this is all about knowing what your bar tab strategy is going to look like. So as you'll probably know by now, soft drinks are included on Virgin Voyages, so if you're looking for a Coke or a Sprite or something like that, that will be included as part of your cruise fare, as well as basic filter coffee and tea as well. But if you're looking for anything else, including alcoholic beverages, then you will of course need to pay for those separately. There is a way to reduce the cost of these by pre-purchasing a bar tab before you head on board. There are a few options available to you if you're pre-purchasing your bar tab, and you do get an extra bonus on top of what you're spending in cash to spend on board. So there is a little incentive there. One thing I will say though is it does get a little bit complicated trying to figure out exactly how much you're going to spend and how much you're going to save by paying for a bar tab in advance, which is why we put the hard work into building the bar tab calculator. So this is a custom built tool that takes in the answers to a few questions that it asks, including how long the voyage is, what you generally like to drink, and how much of it you like to drink. And it will come up with a figure of how much we predict you're going to spend on board. We'll also match that up with how much bar tab you should be buying in order to maximize the savings. So if you're looking for that, make sure you head to vvinsider.com. There are unfortunately some copycats out there that have built their own bar tab tool, but we've tried a few of these and they're wholly inaccurate. So although of course it's very flattering to be copied in such a way, just make sure if you're sailing on board, you're getting the most accurate results by heading to the vvinsider.com tool. Now on to tip number 4, which is all about researching the port that you're heading to, not just the port excursions. If you remember from my trip report back in January, this comes from lived experiences where we'd booked a port excursion and hadn't done any research into it whatsoever. And it turned out we were actually going to be climbing inside of a waterfall and getting very wet indeed. Well, because I didn't do the research and I hadn't planned, I ended up going into this waterfall in a pair of trainers and a hat and a t-shirt. I could have avoided all of this by using this tip, which is to just do your research. So yes, it's very tempting to just look through the app and choose a port excursion that looks fun, but do try to at least Google what goes into that port excursion. Sometimes the description that is given on the app or on the website are not as thorough as they really should be. And this is exactly what happened to us. If we'd done a very quick Google of what to expect during this type of tour, we would have known exactly what to prepare for. So do make sure, even if you booked a shore excursion through Virgin Voyages Direct, that you do your own research about them as well. But one thing that's really useful too is just to have a quick cursory glance of what to expect when you actually arrive at port. Quite often the cruise ports themselves are not very pedestrian friendly, and they're quite far outside of the city as well. You may also need to prepare for the fact that there might not be a cruise port at all, and it might be what's known as a tender port. If it's a tender port, it means that you're not actually going to be alongside land at all. It means instead you're going to be boarding what's known as a tender boat. And these generally are actually from the Virgin Voyages ship themselves. So they'll lower a tender boat. It looks a little bit like a lifeboat, and actually it doubles up as one as well. But you'll be using this small boat to get into the port. And because of course the capacity of those boats is limited, you will need to book your slot in order to get onto land. So it's very important you know which of the ports that you're attending is a tender port or not. Again, these are questions that can be answered with a very quick online search. But quite often the best way to know about a port is by using my next tip, which is tip number 5. And this is all about joining the Facebook group or the Facebook community that belongs to your specific sailing. And there's a few reasons why you want to do this. So if you've not sailed before, this might be something of a mystery to you. But for every single Virgin voyage, there will be a linked Facebook group with that. This is of course unofficial. Virgin Voyages don't set these up themselves. In fact, these groups are quite often set up by other sailors that are heading on the same journey as you. And the great thing about these Facebook communities is that you can have a bit of a conversation with all these individual sailors that are heading on your trip and talking about and asking questions about the trip that you're actually going on. And what you'll find is this will be quite a decent intersection of different people, some people that have never sailed before, and some people that have done this exact route or been to these exact ports before. Which means if you do have a question about a particular port, or if you have a question about the ship, for example, you can ask in those Facebook communities, and 9 times out of 10 you're going to get a useful answer. This is also a really good way to meet people before you sail. So often we've seen people planning pre-sail drinks, or closer to the time when everyone travels into the port city, this is where you'll send pictures of the bars that you've been to or places that you've eaten, and often sailors actually meet up and get to know one another before you even head on board. So it makes the whole thing very, very social indeed. It also makes it very exciting to see everyone planning and packing and heading off to the trip that you're also on. It's a real community vibe. I will give a little bit of a health warning here because some of these Facebook groups are set up by travel agents that don't really care about the voyage or actually aren't going on the voyage themselves. And they might have only set this group up to try and snag some more business from people. So instead of falling into that trap, we've made things really easy. So if you head over to vvinsider.com and click on FB groups, we host a list of trusted Facebook groups that are actually submitted to us by sailors in the community. And although we can't exactly vet every single one of these groups, every one of these submitted groups have to respect the rules that we set out, which means that it has to be a welcoming environment with helpful answers. Using this list often means that you can save a huge amount of time searching manually through Facebook. So make sure that you have a look on this list first for your voyage. If there isn't a group already for your voyage, you're very welcome to set one up on your own if you feel like you want to be the admin. You just need to tell us about the group using the form on our website, and we can list your group so other sailors can see it as well. Now, tip number 6 seems to be something that everyone continually gets wrong, including myself, and that's all about packing like an experienced sailor. Well, like I say, I haven't cracked the formula of this yet, but I can give you a few tips in the right direction. So packing for any vacation is always a little bit of a stressful activity, but actually packing for a cruise vacation, I feel, is even a little bit more stressful because you have to think about all eventualities, especially when you're at sea and you can't just pop to a store really quickly. And remember, the vibe on Virgin Voyages shifts quite a lot. And we definitely see this through the course of a day. So when you wake up in the morning and you want to grab some brunch, you might want something very casual. Then you might want to head outside and head to the pool. So you might want to get changed for that and put sunscreen on. And then, of course, once that's all done and you're heading off to dinner, you want something a little bit more formal or a little bit more put together. So that's another outfit. So if you times this number of outfits by how many nights you're on board, suddenly it's a huge number of clothes to take with you. Well, like I say, I always feel like I pack too much, and often I'll just pick things out of the case, hang it up, and it will stay in the wardrobe the entire time until I pack it back ready to head back home. So if you feel like doing as I say and not as I do, I would just recommend being very thoughtful about what you're putting in your case and thinking, am I actually going to be wearing this or not? Because do remember, there are laundry services available on the ship. So unfortunately with Virgin Voyages, there isn't a self-service laundrette that you can use, but the laundry services are fairly good. And you can send an entire bag of laundry, a very, very large bag of laundry, off for a single price, and it will be cleaned and folded and put back in your cabin. Well, by using services like this, and depending on which level of the sailing club, which is the loyalty program on Virgin Voyages that you're on, you can actually get the laundry services included. So make sure you do a little bit of research into what's actually available on your loyalty scheme. But the fact of the matter is, you might not need to take as many clothes as you think. One thing you do need to be aware of is that there are themed nights on Virgin Voyages that you might want to pack for. Now, this is always optional. You're never forced to wear anything that you don't want to wear. But if you want to pack for those themed nights and join in the fun, you'll need to know which themed nights correspond with the ship that you're on. So we put together a guide on dressing for themed nights and packing the correct outfits. So take a look on that page and take a look to see which ship you're on. So for example, if you're on Resilient Lady, there are 2 themed nights. There's a party called We Fancy, which is all about glittering gold, and there's a 1980s themed party called Club Rubik's. So just using Resilient Lady as an example, you've suddenly got 4 themed nights that you'll need to pack for. So you'll have those 2 events that I was talking about, but you'll also have Scarlet Night, which is on every ship, which is the red themed party. And then of course you've got PJ Party on the first night as well. So you'll need to pack your PJs too, and slippers and any accessories that go with them. So just make sure you leave enough room for those. But it's worth noting on Virgin Voyages, there are a few things that you're not able to bring on the ship, including things like Starlink satellite dishes or clothes irons or steamers. If you're looking for a steamer, you can ask the cabin host for one, but you can't bring one in your luggage. But if I was to take my own advice, I would say experienced sailors wouldn't necessarily pack more, they just pack smarter. So make sure you take a look at all those options before you head off. If you're somebody that normally books your voyages direct, you might not realize that there are actually a huge number of benefits to booking with a trusted travel advisor instead of booking direct. One of the biggest pluses is having an expert that is at your side if you need to make any changes or have any questions along the way. If you've ever had the mispleasure of having to sit on hold to sailor services, you'll know exactly what you're trying to avoid here. Well, by having the #1 independent experts of Virgin Voyages at your side when you're booking your next voyage, you can't go far wrong, and it's a win-win. As well, it doesn't cost you any extra at all. You're paying exactly what you would pay if you were to book direct with Virgin Voyages. The only difference is that we'll be connected to your booking, so you'll be helping support the work that we do, but we'll also be helping personally support the voyage that you're heading on to as well. For extra peace of mind, all of your payments and your bookings are still managed with Virgin Voyages. So when you're paying your deposit and paying your balance, you're doing that with Virgin Voyages directly, but but we will still stay connected to your booking. So if you're interested in seeing how that all works and how you can personally benefit from booking with us, head over to vvinsider.com/book and look at all the information there, but also send us an inquiry. We'd love to speak more about your future voyage plans and help you plan out the perfect voyage possible. I also want to take this opportunity to say thank you to all of our YouTube members, including our brand new YouTube members that joined us just a week ago. We have some hidden videos in the pipeline ready for you. We're going to be releasing a new one in the next couple of days. So keep a look at your feed if you're a Rockstar or a Mega Rockstar YouTube member with us. And there's a hidden video all about choosing the secret cabins on board. If that sounds interesting to you and you'd like to support the work that we do and join our little insider group, then you can find more information about that over in our YouTube members joining section. If you have any of your own planning tips that I've failed to mention on this video, well, make sure you share them with other sailors in the comments below, because we want to make sure that VV Insider continues to be the #1 most trusted community about Virgin Voyages, and with your help we can absolutely do that. Thank you so much for coming along today, and until I see you next time, happy sailing.